So you're in Ponte Vedra?
Welcome to another episode of Profusion. Today we've got Coach Matthew Driscoll in the house. Welcome, Matt. Are you okay with Matt or Coach, or how do you?
I prefer Matthew if you use that name. My mother used that name with me all the time, and she's passed away in '86. So I've always been a Matthew since then, and then Coach is fine.
Okay, Coach. All right, you're off to a great start this season, right? How do you feel about this?
Well, when you look at what we do over our 16th season, we just played when we played Georgia Tech. As a matter of fact, when we beat them on Sunday, that was our 100th guaranteed game, which is the people that we play pay us money to come play them. And so it's a lot to kind of endure as far as like over your long haul of overall record and all that kind of stuff, because you don't win very many of them. We have won several, obviously 2 already this year, and coming into this year in the last 15 years, we've only beat 2 Power Fours. So really excited about it from a lot of different aspects. And one of them mainly is, the motivational aspect of it from the guys' perspective. And so how do you look at that when you have so many new pieces, 8 of them, that get mixed in, 14 total, with only one of those 14 being with us over a season. And so a lot of newness, however, a lot of excitement, a lot of guys who feel like maybe they were overlooked or maybe they could have even gone higher. And then guys that you get from the transfer portal that maybe on the back end of their career that have one more go around, so to speak. So we've done a really good job. And so the carrot's always put in front of them, like, we're not going to get a steak and a check. Like, we're going to play a game. And like, we're going to prepare. It doesn't matter if we're playing Florida or Florida National. It's irrelevant. Like, we're going to prepare the same way because, in my opinion, consistency is so pivotal in what we do as humans, is what we do in our business, is what we do in our home. It's what we do with our marriage, with our children, with our friends, with whatever it is. Consistency is so critical. And to be committed to that and understand that discipline of the littlest details are going to make the biggest difference when you have that kind of mindset and you understand what you're going through when you go play a South Carolina. Because you have that, the game is no bigger or no smaller. It's the game. It's the one in front of you. And so I've been asked, since we beat South Carolina and we beat Georgia Tech, one of the questions I've been asked a lot is, which one was the better one, or which one was more impressive, all that kind of stuff.
And do you have an answer or no?
Yes. Yeah. And neither.
Yeah.
Neither. And I'll tell you why. It was Charleston Southern. Because you beat South Carolina and then you come home and you lay an egg against Charleston Southern in a home opener after you just beat a Power Four.
Yeah.
What does that say about your program? Was that a one-off? Was that just an oops? Was that we're getting our backs padded so much that they can't move forward? Or is it truly a consistency to what they do on a daily basis and the way in which they approach those particular games? And so then you do that, and then you go to Georgia Tech and you repeat what transpired the first weekend. And, which is to win 2 Power Four games on the road at our level in a 1-week span is pretty much unheard of. You'd have to do some really, really deep research to find another team that's done that or has even come close to doing that. And I think you're going to struggle. So that's where we are right now. North Carolina, Asheville's coming in Monday night, our next home game. And obviously what those people had to endure and be resilient with and go through from the hurricane and be displaced, right? And so another different, kind of mindset or a processing that you're going through. And I know Coach well, and he was at Clemson where I was at one time as well too. And so I think when you look at what we do, at the end of the day, this seat, not me, this seat, the men's basketball coach, they say athletics is your front porch. Well, then that means we're the stairs, because we ain't got football. And so in order to get a national bang, right, last night, LSU wins at Kansas State and are talking about how hard it is to win a Power 4 game on the road this early in the year. And then all of a sudden the announcer goes, well, but my man just did it twice at the University of North Florida, right? So, all that stuff is just, it matters in our business. Because at the end of the day, we're hired and fired for winning and losing. So if you don't think that's a business, then I don't know what it is, because what is that called? The bottom line, right? If it ain't black, you're in trouble. If you're dealing with the red, I manage McDonald's. So I got a pretty good understanding about what all that looks like.
Did you mean is that an analogy? Did you really manage at McDonald's?
Well, I would never lie to you, because if you never lie, you don't have to remember anything. I was 20 and I didn't have a degree, and I screwed up in college, and I went and I didn't do what I was supposed to do. So where I come from in Pittsburgh, where I grew up, where I live in my house, it was either go to college or go to the military. And if you chose to do neither, then you're off the payroll. You're out. You got to go do whatever you got to do. 5 boys, dad delivered bread for 36 years. I mean, it doesn't make my dad a bad human being. It just we got to grow up and move on in life. And so to his credit, he came back and helped me get my degree at 27. But at 20, I was managing McDonald's. And I knew in my heart that I was to be a coach and a teacher. I knew when God just laid it on me, this is what you're going to do. And so I went through that managing aspect of it. And as you're managing McDonald's and you're the corporation is just a joke. It's unbelievable. Hamburger U is a real place. All that stuff is unbelievable. Right. And so you're learning, service and quality and cleanliness, and you're learning about customers and learn about all that stuff. And then they see you as a crew person, because my daddy said, whatever you do, your name's on, and you better never, ever mess up our last name. So come to my McDonald's on McKnight Road, by the way, where the Big Mac was launched, right? Not when I was there, but at that store, right? You come to my McDonald's, you'd want to go to the bathroom in my bathrooms, right? And then you'd want to eat in my dining area because I cleaned it, and you'd want to eat like I cleaned the vats like it was nobody's business, because that's what you did. I was 19 years old, and that's the way I was raised. I had a job since I was 12.
What was your first job?
I was a paper boy. Well, I was a paper boy, but I was a lot. I was a laborer and helper, and I did anything I could make. When I was 14 years old, I was parking cars at the Common Plea, which is right next to the county morgue in downtown Pittsburgh.
You're allowed to park cars at 14?
No, but I was parking cars.
Yeah.
And I actually parked Jackie Sherrill's car once when he was the coach at Pitt, because when I opened up the door, it played Hail to Pitt, the Pitt fight song. And when I saw him when I was at Baylor, he was doing the Keller on one of the football games on Fox, because we had RG3. And I went up and introduced myself to him, I got to meet you because I parked your car, and we laughed about it. He's like, man, the recruits loved that. They thought that thing was the greatest. But that's how I've always been. Work, because work brings profit and talk leads to poverty. It's just the way it is. And so
work brings profit, talk brings poverty. Was that it?
Work brings profit. Mere talk leads to poverty. People that talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, right?
Yeah.
So, and in business, it's so true. And so at that McDonald's, I was convinced they loved me as a crew person. I immediately got promoted to manager. Then I got a store that was awful that they said, go fix it. And we did. And I'm like, man, I'm going to own 6 of these things. I'm just going to keep on keeping on. And then because God is so good, he sent a guy in the front door, and the guy who I knew from playing high school basketball with or playing out in the park with said, Drisk, I need a job. And I said, yeah, no problem. I'll hire you. No, don't even fill an application. You're hired. For what? Because I'm going back to junior college because I want to get my degree. And I'm like, man, I really want to do that. Well, you need to come with me and come play pickup, and maybe coach will like you. And there's a whole story about that too. And like, so that's what got me back to college, which enabled me to finally get my degree, which allowed me to get into coaching, which allowed me, and I call that dots on a map.
So were you a basketball player growing up?
Oh, yeah. Apparently when I was younger, I didn't know this till we won our first championship, but Joey Greer was I loved him, emulated him. I mean, I walked pigeon toe, tried to get pigeon toe because that's how he was. I mean, everything. But apparently I was a manager for my dad's. My dad was the coach of the Catholic elementary team because my brother was on the team. And so apparently I would, shoot and get the bottles and do the towels, whatever. I don't have recollection of doing that. I remember shooting, but I don't have recollection of doing that. But he said I did. So anyways, yeah, I knew I played. I was going to the NBA. I was better than Scotty Skiles. I had Isaiah Thomas. There's no doubt. I would shoot in the winter. You wear white gloves when you're from Pittsburgh, and you wear white gloves that are like cloth, and you cut off the fingertips of them. And then when you get done shooting, the palm of it has got to be white still, because if it's nasty or mucky or dirty from the snow on the ground you were dribbling, because the snow was melting, you'd scrape the snow, but you still want to shoot and you want to have touch of the ball. But if this was dirty, then you weren't shooting right.
Because so you don't want your palm to touch the ball? That's correct. Because you want it to be on the pads. And so I know that sounds crazy, but I'm just telling you what we did. And so I knew there's a game, and I looked it up because I should buy it. And I found it. And it's called, I don't even know what it's called. I couldn't tell you exactly what it's called, but if I Googled it for 15 minutes, I would find it. It was an NBA card game, and it was with dice, and it had all these cards and all these statistics and a basketball court, and you pick the starting lineups and you know whatever it is, and then you rolled the dice, and the dice meant this, and then one of them was a defensive dice, and it meant this, whether it was a make or a miss so I made my own league, and I had a league, and I mean I knew I was kind of going down that avenue, but baseball was my best sport, physically, because I was a really good catcher, and I had a really good eye for the ball, and so I could hit, and so we won states as a junior, and of course my size at 5'8", and so next thing you know, I'm the leading hitter, and I'm making all this stuff, and a couple schools messed with me, but nobody serious, not big schools, but I was like, man, I ain't doing that. So I went to Muskingum. I played basketball for Coach Burson, who's a legendary coach in the industry. I got to do a clinic with him about 8 years ago. I talk about an amazing moment in my life. And then I didn't do well. I had a 1-2 my first semester. Second semester was a little bit better, but they said that you can't come back. So now I go home, and then McDonald's, and then there's a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's what kind of got me going into what I'm doing and in the way in which I do it. And so I got they're right here. I still have it's an amazing. Have you ever watched The Founder? Yeah.
He was a brutal human being. But from a business perspective, from if you getting on a tennis court and trying to figure out how to make the line work, and I love that stuff, right? And then while I was here, a guy who used to be a helper at a high school used to come to camp. He actually owned 3 or 4 McDonald's, and he actually sold them a couple of years ago. And so I showed him the book, and then he brought me, there was a new one. that came out.
Grinding it out. Are you reading that now, or is that
no? This was from a couple years ago. Yeah. It's called the newly updated version.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a cool thing that I still had the original, and then that one. So I just call it dots on a map. I believe that if we embrace where our feet are planted, and we have a genuine purpose, and then treat others the way we want to be treated, no matter how they're treating you, somehow the dots at some point, for instance, our first player that was a Hall of Fame player, like the guy that sent him to me, his high school coach, in 1994, when I was working camps at Clemson, he was there he was a JV high school coach. And like, I treat everybody the way I want to be treated. Like, I didn't care if it was JV. I don't care if this is Clemson or whatever. Like, I'm just going to be a good human being and whatever. And he sends us our first Hall of Famer once we got the job. So I think it's really important. And from a business aspect of it, right? When you look at the business model, like, this is a business. And what's the number one thing in business? Everybody wants the bottom line, right? So how do you get to the bottom line? Well, the first thing you better do is you better have the right people, right? We always used to say, surround yourself with the right people. Coach Kennan always says, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And so you got to get those dudes. John Gordon says, get them on your bus, but we've been saying it way before. John Gordon never wrote a book. And like, Coach Kennan's been with me 16 years. Coach Evans, 16 years with a short hiatus to Georgia Tech. Coach Perkins was our manager at Baylor. He's been with us 12 here, but I've known him since 06, and my son's on staff. So a huge part of business, like Coach Drew, for instance, in 03, we take over a program at Baylor with a murder. In 2021, he wins the national championship. But when I took the job here in 09, when we got together to cry and tell each other how much we love each other and thank you for everything, he said, Driscoll, let's help each other. Let's tell each other three things. And the first thing he said was, you know, one of the most beautiful things about you is you're not a yes man. You're not afraid to appropriately say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. The loyalty that you have that goes with that, right? And so I think that's so critical, right? But we know this. Life's all about relationships. The Pumps have been doing a clinic in LA that I had been going to for years. I've been blessed to be part of it because of my connections with who I worked with. But it's always true. It's all about relationships. And so I think from a mindset, we have to understand that every day, that we can be the difference in someone's life.
Yeah, I was at the arena, I think a year or two ago. It's beautiful. Beautiful. They redid it. What do you think? You've been there 15 years approximately.
Yeah, 16 seasons.
What do you think you beat? First of all, what is Power Four? What exactly does that mean?
So it used to be called BCS, which was the big boys in football. And then they changed it to Power Five because there were 5 leagues: the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, the Pac-12, and the SEC. So they were called the Power Five. And then there was this Power 5+1, and that was like the Big East, AAs. They kind of clumped them together.
So what do you think that over the 15 years, probably potentially your best start ever, arguably, what do you think it is? What do you think is the cause of that?
Players.
Recruitment.
It's no doubt of it. It's players. We lost the best player in America last year. I don't know if you know that. And he went to Tennessee, and he's making, you know, between high 6 and 7 digits in today's landscape. And that kid was a 5-point-a-game scorer the year before. And so we go out and recruit, and we bring in 8 new guys. But we're really good. I'm just telling you, our staff, and I give those guys so much credit, they're really good at putting a round peg in a round hole. And we're not about hammering, you know, we're not going to, you know, grab this bad boy and try to hammer, you know, a square peg, and like, we ain't doing that.
Yeah.
And so players make plays. A player coach team is always more critical because between the black lines, they do it. And so bringing them together, having an esprit de corps, having the ability to function. Now that is where the culture comes in, all those things on the wall. That is where the previous guys that are around or have been around or what they've left behind, that's the standard, as you can see, where it talks about be the standard, which is from like 16, I think. And so, like, there's certain things that come into play when you come here. And so, because of all that stuff, we were able to flip it really quick. And so, in this new landscape, it doesn't bother me like it bothers others, because you're either going to swim in the pool or you're going to drown. And so we just, I mean, it was tough. It was very different. This was the most difficult recruiting class we've ever had. Now, we just signed 4 yesterday that are really talented and really good. And we're super excited that we've been able to stack 3 in a row, like 3 really good ones in a row. However, like everything else in life, you change a little bit because you realize, like, you just pour into them. Well, coach, if you pour into them too much, they're going to leave. Like, that's life. Like, if a guy has a great opportunity to make generational money, like, awesome, because we're going to win. Like, the byproduct is we get to win. The better we make them, the better men we make them, the better understanding what it takes in order to be successful, right? You need an opportunity, but the biggest thing you need to do is be prepared. So if we prepare them for the opportunity, they have success, we have success, and then we just do it all over again. And so it is what it is. But it's been something that we've hung our hat on, so to speak, and it's been something that's been very, very good to us. I mean, look, I'm going to officiate my 10th player's wedding this summer. But you know what? I don't know if I'm going to be able to do as many as I've been doing. Because now it might be only a 1-year Jake Vander Heiden, who shot 42% from 3 at 6'9", right, from Bucknell. And it might only be a 2-year stint or so I can't pour into them as much. And the relationship can't continue because, relationships, they have stages. They go from 1, they let you in a little bit, and then they let you in a little bit more. And then you go through some adversity, and they let you in a little bit more, and then something else transpires. And so as that grows, right, as your corporation becomes and just grows, then those things start to become more and more and more prevalent. So I don't know many more I'm going to officiate, but I do know that we're going to pour into these dudes no matter what the landscape looks like, no matter what the revenue sharing looks like, no matter what the NLI looks like, no matter what it looks like. And we're going to be transparent. And that's what people ask me all the time. Like, why do you guys – listen, in the last 11 years, we finished in the top half of the league. 8 of those years, 4th or higher. 3 of those years with championships. Last year, picked 11th. We finished 5th with leading scorer and returner, averaged 5 points. We lost 2 Hall of Famers off the team before. So it's consistency. You've got to be committed to it. You've got to be disciplined with it, but it's consistency. They know what they're getting. They know what the standard is, and then let's work because it brings profit.
The money in the sports now is very interesting. Do you guys get like an amount to spend like a GM would be on a pro team? Are you like, I get $3 million or $10 million? I have no idea.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
But you said, do you? And the answer is no. So do college athletic programs have a ledger? Right? I spoke to a really good friend of mine who's an SEC head football coach, right? And you got a ledger. And every month you got to have this much in the coffer because, these are what the collectives are giving these guys. And of course, now with revenue sharing, it's going to be like you saw yesterday, the quarterback was going to go to LSU and Michigan offered him $10.5 million for 4 years. So pretty soon when this house settlement's done, when the scholarship limitations just changed, when that all stuff kind of works its way out, and in probably the next 2 or 3 years, all the antitrust lawsuits and all that stuff, I think it's going to end up being more employee driven than anything else. And so I know guys, I know coaches that are fining their players.
Mm.
So just like they do in the NBA.
Yeah.
So like you want to screw up and miss class? Okay, it's $1,000. You want to do that like $1,000? Do it $1,000. And if you don't like it, go somewhere else.
Right.
But if we're going to give you $250,000, then you got to have some skin in the game too. And so it's just but there's a lot to that too. There's a lot to that too. And so guys are getting promised and then not delivered. Agents are now becoming, they use the word GM, and that's what's everybody's hiring a GM now, on their staff. Not us, but the P4s. They're hiring GMs on their staff because they gotta manage this.
Right.
And so we want to coach.
So you're doing recruitment though, correct? So who's managing, like, do you know how much these players are getting paid? Are you able to like disclose that?
Yeah. I mean, guys are getting, some guys might get 30, some guys might get, not our guys. Some guys get 30, some guys get 50, some guys get 100, some get 150s. One of our former players got $500,000. Another one of our former players got upwards of 6 digits, and at the end of the day can end up being at 7, just depending on how things transpire. So 2 guys that came in the same class, that's generational money, that we poured into those guys and developed those guys and loved on those guys and, all that kind of good stuff. So like guys are getting variance. One guy this year at a P4 got like $2 million. And so basketball is different than football. Men's basketball and college football, like those guys are getting a lot of money. Now, women's basketball and other Olympic sports, golfers, we had a great golfer last year. He was able to get NIL and get different stuff from. So there's other entities too that come into play too. But yeah, guys are getting and they say, well, coaches get paid, which we do. Coaches switch jobs, which we do. That's always been the argument. A coach can leave. Why can't a player? And so it's just the bad thing is there's just a lot of intermediate people, so to speak. And so the agents or the runners or so like I'll give you an example. We started off this whole talk. Coach, what a great start. Well, when you have a great start, you must have really good players. It's not me. I mean, at the end of the day, it's players, right? So if you got really good players, what are people going to start doing? So I know staffs, listen to this. I know staffs who somebody on their staff's job is to do nothing else except have relationships with agents. Because them dudes get to the players. And the agents are getting 10 to 20%. So if a guy's getting $1 million, he's getting 100 to 200,000. So, hey, listen, like I got a P4 that they got 800 on the table. Even handshake lines are getting crazy. Even handshake lines are getting awkward. I mean, it is what it is.
What do you mean handshake lines? What is that?
We had a guy, the greatest player. Let me rephrase it. 2,437 points is currently the greatest scorer in Division I basketball history in the state of Florida, played for us. In 2015, going through the handshake line after the game. Good game, good game, good game, good game. A really good friend of mine was on a sabbatical from Canada, was sitting at the end of the bench, decided to go shake hands with this very famous coach. He just got in line with the rest of us.
Yeah.
He was standing right next to our great player. And the coach said to our great player, man, I'd love to coach you someday.
Mm.
And so my point is, like, all that stuff, like, and so handshake lines are starting to get a little bit awkward. So it's unfortunate. And, you just got to keep on pouring into them, keep on loving them, keep on helping them, disciplining them. I'm very passionate. I'm very intentional. I don't make it personal, but I'm very intentional. And sometimes it looks like I'm irate. I don't cuss at them. I don't call them no good mother effers. I don't do that. But sometimes and to my fault, sometimes I'm not right. It's not. I have to apologize. Like whatever. However, we're going to pour into them because these guys, we have a lot of dudes still playing pro and a lot of guys making a lot of money. And we got a lot of guys in the business world. Like I got a guy in time who's in the Hall of Fame. He's got 2 businesses and one of them is a multi-million-dollar business. And so, like you said, there's a correlation between athletics and like people love to hire athletes. But I know one thing. I don't know how long I have you. In the old days, it'd be 4 years, maybe 5.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So I got to pour into you. I got to help you understand. I'll give you a good example. Freshman last year, if I don't coach him the way I coached him from June to January, he was playing 12 minutes a game. The first game of the league in January, the guy in front of him that was playing 28 minutes a game tore his ACL. And now this guy, as a freshman, has got to be the point guard, the most important dude in our system. And he leads us to a 5-1 start in the whole night. If I would have started coaching him hard then, he would have melted. He'd have been like, oh, all of a sudden now you're going to coach me. So the consistency is what's important. Now he's a sophomore. I don't, obviously once guys learn and once guys figure things out, obviously you start, you change different things.
You said something interesting earlier, like you knew early on, like you were going to be a coach or a teacher. What triggered that? Was it the meeting with Jackie Sherrill or was it something else? Or
that was way before that. So I got out of school and managed McDonald's and all that kind of stuff. Then I also got a part-time job at the pizza shop on the corner. And then I kept on hooping. Like I always had my ball with me. And like, I was always about like working. But like everybody wanted me to work with them and everybody wanted me to help them. And let's go work out or let's go do this. And then all of a sudden my alma mater, the school in my town, they asked me to coach, said, hey, like, why don't you just come be an assistant coach? Well, I don't have a degree. Well, you don't need a degree. And so at 24, I was an assistant coach. And I knew God just kept on putting this stuff in front of me. He gets fired because he screwed something up in 2 months. Now I become the head coach. And and then that's when my dad said, I'm going to help you finish school because you're way too passionate. Like you love this. And so he did. He helped me finish school and I went to Slippery Rock. I drove an hour each way every day and I had to take 19 hours my first semester and pass them all because it was critical. Because, in elementary education, you got to pass something before you can take something. And so I'll tell you that one of the greatest blessings is my junior college coach. So my junior college coach, Coach Hartung, where Bobby, the kid that walked into McDonald's, took me to, Dickie says, listen, Drisk, here's what we're going to do. You're going to go to Slippery Rock. You're going to be an assistant coach for me. You're never going to come to practice. You're only going to come to the games. We're going to find a school district that's hiring because Pennsylvania's big time elementary education, Slippery Rock's big time elementary education. We're going to find a school district that's hiring, which is right down the street, called Seneca Valley. We're going to get you an assistant basketball coaching job, and then you're going to student teach there. And then when you're coaching and you're student teaching, they're going to fall in love with you, and then they're going to hire you. And you know what I did? Exactly what he told me. I said, okay, coach, that's what I'm going to do. Bam, bam, bam. Exactly what he said.
Yeah.
Dots on a map. That's why I tell you, like, dots on a map are so powerful.
Something, I was young too at one point, and I wanted to coach, but part of the problem with coaching is it's not good pay, right?
No,
so it doesn't. And then, obviously when you make it to the bigger time, even, at the highest levels, you can make tremendous amount of money, but it takes time to get to that level. And then kind of like you get stipends, and then it's like, I don't even know, you get paid practically nothing. So what kept you going with it, because that's one of the hardest, in my opinion, getting past that and saying, okay, I can go work over here and make 20 times as much or 10 times as much.
I would have made a lot more. I used to sell cars too.
Yeah, it sounds like you had multiple jobs.
I a limousine driver, like I did it all. And like, I knew one thing. I just felt like I had a gift of just being able to talk and be around people and listen and being compassionate, have empathy. And I just had all that stuff. And I think my mother had a lot to do with that. I was the baby. And so I was making $4,800 at La Roche, I was a head Division III basketball coach, starting a program that had been defunct for 7 years, playing in a league for 4 years that was a scholarship league where we had no scholarships because we were going to go Division III, but we had to go through this moratorium in order to become Division III. While I was the head coach, I got married. My wife and I had my son, who's on staff now, and I was going to grad school while I was a 5th grade teacher. So when you were a 5th grade teacher, you had to go to grad school because you had to get 24 hours of credits of grad school in 6 years, or else you lost your certificate. So I was doing all that at one time. And so you're like you said, so I think they noticed, like, this guy's pretty good. So then they let me be the cross country coach and paid me $3,000 more. And I didn't do anything except drive the van, was at every mile marker, telling them how great they are, took them to McDonald's, and like, that's it. Like that was my deal. But I because of my relationships, but again, because of dots on the map, because of Seneca Valley, because of Rick Taff, because he was from Providence. So we took our team 13 hours to go to team camp in Providence. When I got to Providence, Rick Barnes was the coach. Larry Scheid was the assistant. Larry Scheid took a liking to me. And when Larry Scheid got his first ever Division I job as a head coach, who'd he hire? He hired Matthew Driscoll. So it's all about relationships in those dots that you put on that map. And so I go there, and I'm making 30, 35 maybe. And it's no state tax and all that stuff, right? So like you said, starting to make the grind, right? And there's a couple other stories that are really good, but I'm not going to tell them. But then you win. We flipped in 13 months. We flipped it. We went from the guy getting fired to us coming in, cleaning house, on the cusp of going to the NCAA, end up in the NIT, play Gonzaga, lose at home, and coach gets the Clemson job. Well, assistant at Wyoming, assistant at Clemson, double your pay. So now you're what you said, climbing up the ladder. We go to Clemson, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing, bada boom, bada bing. We get fired. So now I go back to Valparaiso for 7 weeks, and now I'm making half of what I was making at Clemson and a little bit more than I was making at Wyoming.
Part of it is you have a family and you have to move, right?
So now I got 2 kids.
You got to move everywhere.
I got a wife and 2 kids.
Right.
So, and the funny story about this is I get hired at Valparaiso. So we go and we buy this house. And so I've always done well on my homes. I always buy a house that you can sell immediately. We sold our house at Clemson for cash. We sold the one in Valpo like this. When I got this job, the house wasn't even for sale. And a guy knocked on the door because he read in the paper I took the job and said to my wife, I've always loved this house. I've always wanted this house. I'll pay cash. Now, we didn't sell it to him. Somebody else came in and offered us a little bit more. But my point is, we've always done well with that part of it.
How do you pick your homes? How do you?
But that's what we did. And I always, like Clemson, we didn't because they were too young. But every house after that, every house had a pool. That was the number one prerequisite. It was going to have a pool because my family, I didn't want them to be protected. I wanted them to have something nice, and I wanted all their friends to come over. So I was going to be gone so much. I wanted to, and people like to buy a house with a pool. And so we got this deal at Valparaiso. So long story short, there's a murder at Baylor. We get the Baylor job and we're leaving. And I call my realtor, and she told me just what you said, exactly what you said. Coach, I know the business. And there was a guy last year here and he stayed for 1 year and we can't sell his house. And don't you dare do anything to this house. You just keep it the way it is. And let's see after a year how long you're going to stay. So I said, okay. 7 weeks later, I call her. Kim, Coach, how are you? I'm great. Hey, let me ask you a question. Coach, you're not putting a deck on the house. I told you, you're not doing anything to the house. I said, Kim, I'm not going to put a deck on the house. I need you to sell the house. Huh? What are you talking about? We're going to Baylor. I'm getting on a plane tonight and I'm not coming home. But I say, good news is you got to sell Coach Drew's house too, because he's going to take the head job. So, all that stuff that you're talking about, you just keep going. Listen to me. This is important. Don't burn a bridge. Agree to disagree. You don't have to go break bread. So Coach Scheid at Wyoming gets the Clemson job. I'm leaving with him. I ain't staying. Driss, the AD, brings me in. Older guy, very, very connected. The guy he hires ends up taking our success, building upon it, going to the NCAA tournament, and getting, I don't know, another job somewhere else, like a higher level job. Iowa State, I don't even know. And Coach said, listen, I want you to stay. You'd be amazing. And then when he leaves, I'll give you the job. Yada, yada, yada. Your wife will raise her pay as a cheerleading coach. No, I'm not staying, right? We go through this whole deal for like 20 minutes. And then it got a little bit testy because I kept saying no. So we agree to disagree. I get up, I leave. This is 1998. In 2009, guess who the AD is that hires me here at the University of North Florida? Same guy. So even though you got disagreement, you still got to do the right thing. And so it dots on the map. It's completely dots on the map. But you're 100% right. I mean, it's a grind. And you know what else too, though? Like my dad's job was a grind, right? But these are the things you choose, right, to do. So this is what you're going to do it. And do it to its fullest.
Yeah.
And so if, like Jordan said all the time, like, and this is the one thing about athletics, and it's the same in business. I bet you if you took the best, and I do this all the time with every game. I don't have my cards in front of me. Like I Google our theme for the game and I compare it to coaching and leadership. And I see where this thing goes. And I use that stuff as I prepare for my preparation to share with the guys. But like when you're in a corporation, right? Or you're Michael Jordan, or you're a coach, or you're a player, like, you know what gets you to the top? Seriously. You know what puts you at the top? Boring. That's what puts you at the top. The things that are mundane, the things that are a daily grind, the things that you know you have to do in order to keep, it's not sexy, it's not fun, it's like it's boring. And Jordan always said that. 85% of what he did was boring and mundane. But that's what makes you special, right? That's what gets you and helps you become champions and winners. And so it's just you got to embrace it. You got to embrace where you're playing it. You have to.
What do you think your biggest challenge has been at UNF?
I think my biggest challenge personally with myself or with the program.
Either way.
Well, they're two different answers.
Yeah.
So personally, my biggest challenge has been my mind. I've really struggled. You know, it's my goddaughter is part of the organization. It's called the Hidden Opponent. And it's an incredible, she's going to be a great psychologist one day. Shout out to Kelsey. And like that hidden opponent, like it's talking to you 24/7, 365. And demons are always trying to get into you. Always. They're trying to get to you, right? And so that mindset, like one time my job was put on the line. You either do this or you're fired. So that's a whole different deal. And then me, myself, I put a lot of pressure on myself because this seat, as I said earlier, is critical to the university. This seat is also critical to my staff. It's critical to their families. It's critical to our players. It's critical to their success. It's like I really, really embrace what this seat represents. And because of that, it puts a lot of mental battles. And
so what do you do to combat it? Are you reading? Or are you listening to something? Or how do you manage?
First of all, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. So because of that, I lean in that direction. My wife is my hero, and I lean on her tremendously. I have a group that I pour into and I open up to. If I feel like I'm going down some different roads that I really, and this has happened in the last 2 weeks. I mean, I've been in places and my mind has processed things and, you know, all those things. It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
And when you're someone that has my kind of personality and you have my kind of traits and you're wired the way I'm wired, you're continually, how can I do it better? How can I make it better? How can I make these guys better? But also too, I can't stumble because there's too much at stake. There's too many people. And I don't want to be that guy, so to speak. So for me, it's the hidden opponent. It's that mental aspect. From the program's perspective, our biggest challenge is, and this is going to sound awkward to you, but our biggest challenge is an old phrase. And why are old phrases always the best phrases? Because the meaning of them just resonates all the time. Our biggest challenge is the elephant in the room. It's our biggest challenge. The money, the agents, the runners, am I looking in the mirror? Am I that part? Like their whole identity is based on basketball, when in reality, I don't even like basketball. And so they're dealing with that, the mental capacity of it. And how do we, like one time, like the other day, someone said, Coach, I just saw you guys are a number one seed. We're 3 games into the year. What do you want? Hey, we drug test. You want drug tested? Like, what are you talking about? Like one time when we made our first run to the NCAA tournament, guy said to me in January, like, hey, Coach, Joe Lenardi came out and said you guys are playing Kentucky. Kentucky? Man, we got to beat Stetson. Like, what are you talking about? So like the elephant in the room is always our biggest challenge because social media, like they're seeing all this, they're hearing all this, they're getting DMs They're reaching out to their families. Like, listen to me. When Chaz Lanier got a tweet after the Bellarmine game last year that said, from like the number one NBA dude that everybody follows, here's all he said. All right, Chaz, you got my attention now. It was over. The next 3-4 days was triage. Like, okay, relax. Okay, mom, relax. Okay, stop looking at your phone. Okay, don't say that. Don't tell them that. Like, you can't speak to 100. You can't be kind to everybody. Be nice. Be grateful. But you can't say this. You can't say, wait till after the season, I look forward to. No. You can't talk to 100 people. So, like the elephants in the room, that's our biggest challenge. The transparency, the consistency. I had to do a talk on the bus on the way to Georgia Tech because our guys were getting blown up by agents. So it is what it is. It's a compliment. Makes you feel good, right? We must have the right dudes on the bus, John Gordon. But
well, one thing in terms of your mindset I heard not too long ago was talk to yourself, don't listen to yourself. And so I've been working on, me personally, my mental game is it is hard to talk to yourself because it just doesn't seem right, but I'm working. It's a work in progress rather than listening to myself.
Well, first of all, great job. And second of all, I do. And I do it when I work out in the morning. I do it when I'm driving. I do it when, like, I'm constantly just okay. Like, and try not to make like I got that. I'm that. I don't know. Is it called Enneagram? You ever heard of that? ENN Enneagram. It's one of our coaches' wives is a doctor, Dr. Perkins, and she does a phenomenal deal with it. If you ever want to have her on, and it's about 9 personalities and how you're connected to the people in this, and it's amazing how it comes to fruition.
Yeah,
and I'm a gut guy. I'm just that guy, and so, like, because of that, you got to be careful. So I'm always trying to, perspective, and try to get myself. And then when I get confused, that's when I say, okay, let me talk to somebody else. Let me ask somebody else. And so talking to yourself is really good. And the other thing too about talking to yourself is, and this is the one thing that's at this profession you have to know is don't let, though it does hurt my heart, don't let someone's criticism affect you so hard and so much that you'd never ask that dude for their opinion or their advice. So that's the other thing I would say. Like, make sure you're listening or reading from the right group, because
do you believe in criticism?
Of course.
Yeah.
Hey, listen to me. I'd rather be saved by criticism than ruined by praise. My dad believes you're going to get disciplined for what you do wrong. You ain't going to get praised for what you do right. So it didn't mean he wasn't nice to me or say good things. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah, criticism is, I'd rather be saved by criticism.
So,
last question, because I got to go.
Last question. We'll keep it under 60. What have you ever had any conflicts with internal, like with the team or with the players before? 100%. And how'd you handle that?
Yeah, 100%. Transparency. First of all, our guys know this. Like, your number one information in life is information. It's a number one commodity. Like, you got to have information. Because in order to handle conflict, or in order to deal with conflict, or whatever it is, you got to have information. And then I think the other thing too is, once you gather the information, I think it's in your best interest to decompress to step away from it, to come together with wise counsel before you make whatever decision you're going to make. And so, yeah, we've had plenty of conflict throughout variants of my life. And not just here at every stop I've had along the way. But I would say that, like, gather information. Even though you got my personality, gather information. Because if you don't, you could start something or go into something, and then 5-10 minutes in, they give you some part of information. And so you got to make sure that you're listening to all these different things so that you can come to a solution and come to to come together and make sure that you're moving forward with it. And the other thing too, our guys know is and they know I'm not a grudge guy. Like, you pay your penance, like, we move on. Like, I'm not that guy. Like, you do, like, here's what you did, here's what you're gonna do, we move on. Like, let's go.
All right, last one, actually. I know you like Grinding It Out by Ray Kroc. Do you have one or two other books you'd recommend?
Yes. So first, I'd like to tell you that I'm not a reader.
Not at all? Like, no? How many books a year do you read? Like,
no,
2?
None. I don't read.
Listen? Do you listen to them?
I don't listen. And I'm going to tell you why. Number one, the number one selling book in the world is a book I love to read. It's got 66 chapters. I've never read it. And so if I try to read, I always fall asleep 2 paragraphs in, because I just don't. I like to read articles. So I read articles a lot. I like to read information. So I'll Google information about stuff and I'll read that. Like when I prepare for the games and that kind of stuff. If I like something I hear, whatever. I went and did they had me speak on this.
Redeeming Your Time.
This is a really, really good book. A really, really good book that it's not, even though it's Christian based, you could be anyone. And this is really, really good, because balance, almost ruined my marriage.
Yeah.
Right. And when I got the job, when Coach Drew put out a thing about me, he said the only thing that concerned, actually, Coach Scheid and Coach Drew, the 2 head coaches I worked for in Division I, both of them said the same thing, that they're concerned about my balance and have balance. So that resonated with me, right?
Yeah.
And so, but we have a guy on staff, Coach Kennan, who's a big time reader. And so I just give him stuff or ask him stuff or buy books that I hear, or I listen to something and then he reads them and gives me the cliff notes, and then I'm good to go. So
delegation.
Yeah, well, I guess, but that's just how I am. So
yeah,
I'm a little bit awkward, but I guess we all are in some way.
Yeah, that's your unique strategy. Well, I hope to see you in March Madness, or we will see you in March Madness. I saw the schedule. I think it's very doable.
Well, our league is amazing. So we got some really, really good teams. Really good. Our first year in the league, 4 teams finished first. The 5th place team was a half game out. And in the championship of the tournament, which is the only team that goes to the NCAA tournament, the 1 team, the 5 seed played the 6 seed for the championship, and the 6 seed won. Mm-hmm. So it's that, like, once you get to your league, it's a whole nother level. So I appreciate the optimism and I'm grateful for it. But all we care about is this. It's always been what we've been about. It's who we are. It's just get up, win the day, and go to bed. Like, just go 1-0.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Coach. We'll catch up with you later.
Appreciate you. God bless you.
All right. God bless you.
Thank you.
All right.